The real estate market can be brutal, whether you're the buyer, the seller, or the agent. The highs and lows of purchasing a home can be extremely stressful. But what if it also involved the death of others? Had a dark past that you had to decide to live with or pass on? Here are 10 stories on what some people had to endure in this process. Enjoy. The lady next door to me died and wasn't found until she was more liquid than solid on her living room carpet. The family couldn't pay something about back taxes or something, and the house went to HUD to auction. HUD paid for some cleanup, but not to replace the carpet, only steam clean it. It finally sold, and I was talking to the guy who was flipping it. Before I could mention the death, he asked if the house had had a water leak under the foundation because they had ripped up the carpet and pad to put down the lament floor. It was really dirty and got all over them and their clothes. I told him what happened and how HUD went cheap on what to fix before the auction. He got green and started puking right there on his side of the fence. My parents were realtors and also flipped houses. When I was growing up, I used to help them a lot, usually by cleaning. When I was 12, I was helping with a house that was infested with roaches. I noticed the closets were smeared with shit and children's handprints. There were fingernail scratches on the insides of the doors as well. I asked my parents why this was the case. They told me the old tenants used to lock their toddlers in the closets for days. When I was looking for my last house, I went with my wife and a realtor to look at several houses. We went to look at one house in particular because it didn't seem like the price they were asking for could be real. Huge house, sitting on tons of land with outbuildings, going for millions under market value. We got there, and the realtor said, "Oh, I should mention, a serial killer lived here. And when he was put away, cops found 11 bodies on the property." I'm not a realtor, but I suppose the story is relevant. My extended family used to live in a really old house located just north of London. Previously, it used to be Queen Victoria's stop when she was traveling in the area. My uncle, when younger, never believed in ghosts or spirits and would be the first one to call it a load of rubbish. He was sleeping one night and was awoken by a man staring at him at the end of his bed, dressed in an old army uniform. My uncle froze for a few seconds, panicked, and flicked the bedside lamp on, and the man vanished. He refused to sleep in that room from that night onward. We later found out that the man was a previous owner who had returned from war to find his wife having an affair. He was so furious that his wife reported to have told her he would do the worst thing possible to get back at her. He took his twin sons, toddlers at the time, went to the back of the garden where there was a forest, shot them both dead before killing himself. The funny thing is that since my family bought the property, my uncle had twin sons. My mother had twin sons. My uncle's brother, who was also part owner of the property, had twin sons. The weirder part is that my brothers and my uncle and aunt's kids were playing near the forest, and when they were in there, they kept on saying they heard boys laughing, but couldn't see anybody there. They didn't know the house's history. This involves a couple who bought a house in the 1980s. They called me a couple years ago wanting to sell. As we're talking, the wife starts telling me about her difficult pregnancies and how she'd been pregnant many times but lost them all. I felt bad for her, but I'm wondering what this has to do with anything. The husband pipes up and says, "After the last one, I didn't know what to do. I came home, and the first thing I thought to do was remodel the kitchen. I had to break something." He goes on about his impromptu kitchen demolition, dishes still in the cabinets and everything. The guy was devastated that they lost another baby. So he says he's ripping out a corner, and he said he always knew there was a dead pocket there because the span was 3 feet, but the closet behind it was only 2 feet deep. He proceeds to rip out the drywall and finds a ball of cloth. As he pulls back the layers, he realizes it's the skeleton of a baby. It was wrapped up with a teddy bear. He called the police and said they never gotten any follow-up on it. My dad moved into a house where we later learned the previous owner's son killed himself. There was nothing saying as to whether he lived in the house, but we do know which bedroom was his. I'm not into paranormal nonsense, but my sister had that room. Before we learned about the son killing himself, she had all sorts of weird things happening in the room. Alarms going off at odd hours of the night. The TV just turns on, shuts off whenever it feels like it. Especially weird when it's at night and you're all alone. I don't like going up there for that reason. The previous owner also came home one day to catch his wife cheating on him and started shooting at them. He missed them, and you can still see the bullet marks on the wall of the master bedroom. I have had several experiences involving real estate nightmares. One happened when I was managing an apartment complex and walked in on a guy who was in bed decomposing for 2 weeks over the worst heat wave in years. His head was partially melted into the pillow, and his back was full of maggots. I had a couple of stiff drinks that night. Another incident occurred when I walked through a house where a hoarder lived and was attacked by fleas. Saw a rat in the master bedroom the size of a football. Noticed droppings on the bed too. Lady had been living there her entire life and never threw anything away. Apparently couldn't get rid of the rat either. Property inspection turned up a dead body in the attic. It was a suicide. Someone had hung themselves. The homeowner thought her husband had left her years ago. In a way, I guess he did. I used to rent an apartment that was in a converted asylum. It was rumored to be haunted, but I never heard or saw anything whilst living there. When I met with a letting agent to hand the keys back at the property and for him to run through a final inspection, he asked if we had been happy there. I said something to the effect of yes, but we were only moving as the landlord had it up for sale. It became clear he was after some kind of ghost story, as he explained that none of his colleagues liked going to any apartments in the building because when taking photos to market one of them, the red eye detector kept triggering on his phone when no one was in frame. The poor guy looked nervous as hell the entire time we were there. About 6 months ago, I was looking into homes in the area I grew up in because I'm planning to move back to the area. I found a pretty cute house on a busy street in town, read all the info, and it seemed like a good option for my fiance and I. Then something hit me. Based on the address and info provided, I realized it had to be the same house where a Chinese family of 4 was brutally murdered 2 years ago, and the police still don't know who did it. Well, what about you? Are you looking to buy? Have you had something like this happen to you? Have you had a terrifying experience that you would like to share here? If so, contact me through any of my social media links or email me at DuchessDark676@gmail.com. See you next time.